Hey guys, welcome to Otoconioa. You guys are in for a special treat. We have our second bonus episode, so we will be doing an album that I don't have on vinyl that one of our guests pick. So, super exciting. I'm very excited for this album. We got some classic rock coming your way. So, first, before we start the episode, please subscribe to our channel. We are getting good views on the videos, but our subscriber count still isn't rising with the views. So please help subscribe. It helps please the YouTube gods and the YouTube police. So I really appreciate it. All right, here we go. Bonus episode 2. Here we go. We have a very special guest, Michelle, one of my dear friends. Great taste in music, a true classic rock fan. We used to work out and listen to Black Sabbath, AC/DC, Tool, so some good music. And I wanted to have her on because of this awesome taste, and she picked a great album. Welcome, Michelle. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. Good to be here today, Connor.
Michelle, what album did you pick? I'm super excited about this.
So I picked the AC/DC Live Collector's Edition, basically because it has everything that I would want to listen to on it. So for no one other reason than that.
And this is basically the best AC/DC like compilation. It's a live album, which makes it even more awesome. It has basically every song that you need from AC/DC. So we haven't really done a big live album like this, so we picked our favorites, and I am super excited.
Me too.
All right, Michelle, do you want to do as an overview? I have some research, some fun facts, but I want to give you kind of a second to introduce the album or share any facts you have before I dive into my research. Do you want to start us off here?
Sure. So AC/DC is a band that's near and dear to my heart. I've been listening to them since I was a preteen. They're my go-to pump-up music before an exam. They're my workout jam, as Connor mentioned. Really good to box to for those of you who are interested in trying. They're basically, to me, the epitome of rock and roll because they're feel good music. I know a lot of their songs are about sex and drugs and kind of like selfish motifs, but to me it's kind of an escape from reality. When I listen to them, it's me allowing myself to feel those things and just like rock out, get out of my own headspace for a little bit, which is great going into a test or when you're just trying to like engage in some catharsis. So yeah, big fan.
Awesome. All right. So for some of the research I have, just some particular details, some fun facts about the album. So it was released in October 1992. It was their second live album, and it was a recording of several different concerts from their Razor's Edge tour. And it is called one of the best albums of the 90s, which to me is really cool because when I think of the 90s, I think of the grunge era. You have Alice in Chains, Nirvana, a lot of these bands that are replacing hair metal. But AC/DC started in the 70s. It was formed in 1973 in Sydney by Scottish-born brothers Malcolm and Agnes Young. And what is so cool is they're a classic rock band, right, Michelle? But they
Yeah.
still dominate the 90s. One of the only classic rock bands to just really still have kind of their heyday in a different decade. So I thought that was really cool, competing with some of the younger guys, and they're still rocking in the 90s, which is awesome.
Yeah, they really were. That album actually came out the year after I was born, but I've been listening to it, like I said, for a long time. And I love, honestly, that while they're a classic rock band, they're also a family band. Like you said, it's Malcolm and Angus Young. And then later, when Malcolm had to take some break for mental health reasons, it was their nephew Stevie who came in, and he's still touring with them to this day. And it's fantastic. They kept it in the family. I love that.
Yeah, and it's so funny because the accents are so confusing. They were born in Australia, or they're from Australia, but they were born in Scotland. So they have this weird Scottish Australian mix, which is just so comical and kind of funny in a way because you never really have heard of such a thing, and it's so cool that you have this kind of rock and roll Australian band.
Yeah, and they really play into it too. They're all about like fun gimmicks and playing to the crowd and things like that, and with the costumes and the accents and just having a good time with music, which is all I want.
And we'll get into it too. They have some really cool gimmicks and performance aspects during the live concerts. I got some fun facts on that regarding Hell's Bells and We Salute You, so that will be fun when we get to that. But some more basic facts about the band. The singer Bon Scott died after recording Highway to Hell, unfortunately due to alcohol poisoning, so he was replaced with Brian Johnson. That is who is on this album that we'll be listening to. And his first album on the band was Back in Black, one of the best-selling albums of all time. And the album really is a tribute to Bon Scott. So really cool there. It's kind of a homage to him and a different chapter of the band, you know.
Very much so. Yeah, that was the album that actually hooked me on AC/DC in the first place.
Michelle, I got a fun fact for you. Do you know what album reached #1 in the United States first? They have one album that reached #1 in the U.S.
Is
And
it
it's not
High
one you
Voltage?
would think of. It's a tricky one.
It's not High Voltage.
No, it's not High Voltage.
Okay, you tell me.
It is For Those About to Rock, We Salute You, which came out in 1981, which is crazy because they started in the 70s. They had, great albums in the 80s and then great albums in the 90s. You know, it's really rare for a rock and roll band that's, partying and rocking and roll to last 3 decades of making good music. The only other band that comes to mind for me is Rush. They span 3 or 4 decades and were able to make awesome music all throughout. And so to me, that is really cool. They really did have a cool longevity, and each album has kind of a different style and a different sound to it, which is really awesome. Alrighty, so AC/DC, they have sold more than 200 million records worldwide, including 75 million albums in the United States, making it the 9th highest selling artist in the United States and the 16th best selling artist worldwide, it just speaks for itself. This is.
I mean, they also got the nod from like Eddie Van Halen, like Ozzy Osbourne. They've toured together, all of those groups, like Guns N' Roses. I mean, they're all friends. I love that. Like they all support each other, and they've come out and said, like I said, Eddie Van Halen's like, I support AC/DC. They're great. They're phenomenal musicians. And I'm like, to me, that getting the nod from people in that genre, in that era, like it means that you've made it.
For sure. And when you listen to AC/DC, you're imagining yourself driving in a muscle car going to a barbecue. I mean, that's for me, it's so American, the music, even though they're from Australia, which is so cool in a sense.
It is. You picture it like playing with like 4th of July fireworks in the background kind of thing, which they've done.
All right, Michelle, I got some interview questions for you regarding the album. You ready?
All right. Okay.
Why did you pick this album in particular?
I think we kind of already covered that. It's
yeah.
everything that I would want to listen to, that I want in my ears, like Hell's Bells and Highway to Hell. Those are like when I need to just, escape and go for a walk and clear my head. That's what I've got blaring in my headphones. Back in Black and TNT, I've been listening to since I was, like I said, a preteen. I actually made up a dance with some friends of mine in 6th grade to TNT, and it's very derivative and it's terrible. If you ask nicely, I would consider possibly doing it for you at the time that we play that song. But yeah, it's just, for me, music is about the emotion that elicits, and half of that is the memories that come with it. And the songs on this album bring back phenomenal memories, and I just want to keep reliving them, so I keep listening.
That's amazing, because that goes right into our next question. When was the first time you first heard AC/DC? Do you remember?
It was the Back in Black live version that we're going to be listening to. And I was in the car with like some of my girlfriends from grammar school, lifelong friends, still talk to them to this day. If they see this interview, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. We were driving to the mall to, be teenage girls, basically. And Back in Black came on, and we were like, wow, I don't know what this is. It was kind of like redefining. We had been talking about like other music. We always listened to things that like weren't necessarily typical for our generation. I got into the Britney Spears craze after Britney was a big thing. Back then I was listening to like Carlos Santana, like Huey Lewis and the News, REO Speedwagon. And then all of a sudden this came on the radio, and I was like, wow, what is that? It was before Shazam. So we had to do a little bit of research to figure out what we were listening to. And then I listened to Back in Black on repeat. That's the live edition. And that's why it's always going to be the one that resonates the most with me. Not that their like official version isn't phenomenal, but the specifics of the riffs and the pauses, and it's the version I like. I prefer.
That's amazing. The first time I heard AC/DC, it's funny. My dad's a huge progressive rock, classic rock fan, but he was more towards like Led Zeppelin, Rush, Pink Floyd. He wasn't a big AC/DC fan. So the first time I heard AC/DC was in 6th grade. I was at my middle school wrestling practice, and we had the same CD every day, all year, the same CD, and the first song on it was Thunderstruck, and we would warm up to that song, and I was like, man, what is this? And then that kind of launched me into, finding AC/DC, and I think my favorite album is Highway to Hell. Great album, but yeah, that's how I discovered them. Last interview question before we get into the songs. Why do you gravitate towards classic rock, and what does classic rock mean to you as a genre?
Well, honestly, these questions, they'll flow into each other.
Yeah.
Great job, Connor. Like I mentioned before, for me, music is about the emotions that it elicits and the memories for the most part. And like I said, classic rock. It's what my family grew up listening to back when we had a family car ride cassette that my parents had mixed with like all these classic rock songs. And so now when I hear certain songs, I expect a particular one to come on next because that's the order it was on the cassette. And I mean, from there, we had like Chicago and Bob Seger on there and a whole bunch of like different eclectic tastes. And that's kind of what did it for me, what got me into the genre. And then when high school rolled around, I didn't really realize that my tastes had been that progressive. I just thought, as a kid, everybody listens to this. This is what you do. And I have a distinct memory of driving in the car with my twin brother. We were going to the train station. We had somebody else from our class in the back seat, and a Journey song came on, and they were like, "Oh, I love this new band." And I was like, "New? What? Oh, okay, sure. New to you." and that's kind of when I first realized, not everybody grows up listening to the Drive classic rock soundtrack of our lives kind of thing. But yeah, it's always been about the memories and pumping up and just feeling good. So
it's funny that you say that because last year with the pandemic, there was almost this strange revival of classic rock, I think, in the mainstream. I mean, you had all these older bands putting out new albums. We had the new Blue Oyster Cults. We had the new AC/DC album. So
I was about to say that, Connor. You beat me to it.
So I actually want to do an episode, I think, on here where we go over those albums from 2020. I think it would be fun. We have Greta Van Fleet, who's like the new Led Zeppelin, basically making awesome music. They had a new album out this past year, so kind of fun. A lot of people who don't listen to classic rock, I think they might have started getting into it by actually hearing those albums. So it's still cool that the genre is still alive and people are still becoming fans. So I thought that was interesting.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, Michelle. Should we jump into our first song, which is Thunderstruck?
Let's do it.
I got one fun fact before we get into Thunderstruck. This one's pretty funny. So researchers in the University of South Australia have found that playing Thunderstruck during chemotherapy treatment is effective at improving the efficacy of the drug. I didn't look at the research study, but I saw that as an article. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But it is funny that they would even think to do that. So,
I mean, we all know it's effective in improving the efficacy of like shot consumption at college frat parties. So I'm not surprised that it's helpful for other substances as well. It's like the go-to pregame party song.
Yes, Thunderstruck is for those of you who weren't a college frat boy, Thunderstruck is a drinking game in which you form these small groups. And every time they say thunder, one group starts drinking, and then when they say thunder again, the next group starts drinking, so it rotates. Crazy cultural impact, huh? Thunderstruck. When they wrote the song, they definitely didn't think it'd be used for chemotherapy or maybe they knew it would be for drinking games, but... All right, let's jump right into it. First song, Thunderstruck, AC/DC. All right, guys, we're going to switch back. Let's do it.
Did that pump you up the way it used to at your wrestling practice?
I started doing side shuffle, I was doing some sweeps, getting ready, getting warmed up.
It's like the prototypical like headbanging music. I saw you were doing the knot.
Oh, I know. I mean, you just can't not, it's a great song and it's iconic. Everyone thinks of Thunderstruck when you think of AC/DC.
They really do. It was a strong start for this podcast.
So Michelle, give us your breakdown of this song. You could talk about the lyrics, the musical style, the feelings, the emotion, whatever you want. Start us off.
So for me, it's very unique song. I mean, there are some songs with like long intros, and there are some songs we all know, like Layla, where there's basically two songs in one, and I think Thunderstruck's like that. And I like that they did that. I don't always. Usually, there's one portion that everybody likes. They either like the intro or like they like the second half. But I like both, and I always play the extended version, which pisses me off when they don't do that on the radio, because I'm like, you're missing half the song. What are you doing? I get why it's all about airtime there, which is why I'm glad we're on a podcast and we can kind of like take a break and talk about certain aspects. So I love the intensity. It starts kind of like lower, but still intense, and you can just feel it building and building and building until it just explodes. Like I said, like when I think of AC/DC, I think of like fireworks playing in the background, and that's just kind of how it feels. But it's an audio version of that. It's like an audio version of fireworks, just ramping up until it hits you. And it's an iconic hit too. It's not very typical, because everything's kind of on an offbeat too. It's like not necessarily on the downbeat, so it kind of like throws you off every time, which I like.
And I think AC/DC, that is what they're masters of. They're masters of building the song and really hitting that crescendo and just, nailing it. And that's what's so good about this type of music. I've always said this: simple music is good music. You'll see it in Pink Floyd, you'll see it in AC/DC. The guitar riffs aren't, this crazy, just like, they're very simple. Some of them are. But for the most part, they're simple, they're direct, and they're like just crazy combinations of power chords. And it really takes that musical genius to take a simple progression like that and really give it that emotion, give it that power, give it that strength. And I think that's really where AC/DC comes in the musical, classic rock history. They're short and to the point, There's no extra notes, no fancy bells or whistles. It's here's some raw, power chords.
Agreed. And I mean, Connor, you play the guitar, so you know better than I, just like what goes into the actual riffs themselves. But when I was kind of, doing a little bit of research for this particular episode, I was reading up on how Angus and his brother Malcolm co-wrote most of their songs. So even though it's Angus on lead guitar, it's meant to be played as a collaboration. It's meant to be played succinctly together. And if you have all that superfluous extra, like notes and everything, people going kind of off script. I mean, it's not meant to be a band where there's one front runner.
Right.
And you can definitely hear that there's a cohesive sound. And so even when they build it, they build not necessarily simplistically, it's uniquely, but it's succinctly. And I appreciate that. It's definitely the harmonics resonate a lot more with me, personally.
And for sure. And what's so cool about this song, it was inspired, Angus Young wrote this when he was on a flight from Holland to Germany, and the airplane got struck by lightning. And so that kind of inspired him to write the song, which is funny because it's raining right now and there's some thunder outside of my window. I don't know if the mic will pick it up, but the AC/DC gods are washing down over this episode today. So also another fun fact, which is really crazy, there's a common theme of the U.S. government using this music. In 2010, an Iranian nuclear facility was attacked by destructive malware that was supposedly made by the U.S. government, and it made the facility play Thunderstruck on all the speakers in the nuclear facility, which is kind of hilarious, but also kind of, like it's just so out there.
I mean, we're a bunch of nerds talking about music in the most nerdy way possible, and I'm not surprised. Like, we like AC/DC. I'm sure the programmers on the team that like ran the attack likes AC/DC. Like, it was probably a no-brainer for them which one to choose.
Yeah, and then my last fun fact for this one, Thunderstruck, is the music video features Angus Young doing his signature move, which is the duck walk. I'm sure you've seen this, Michelle. I think the duck walk is a funny name for his signature guitar move. For those who haven't seen AC/DC live, Angus Young dresses as a schoolboy. That's kind of his signature style. And it was funny because I was reading interviews about how they found the style. And they were trying to do the different phases of music. They were trying to do the hair metal, the glam, kind of like a goth look. And then his girlfriend or wife, I forget what it was at the time, suggested, well, why don't you just dress up as a schoolboy? And they kind of ran with that style. What do you think about that, Michelle? What do you think about dressing up with this tie, this hat, this jacket, and you
I
know.
think it was relatively new at the time, but it became like very iconic. Like
Hmm.
Jay Giles, his Centerfold music video, they're all dressed in like school clothes and stuff. Like it turned into a movement, a theme. Even Britney Spears with her like, tie with the white button down, like it was a thing. And Angus Young, like I think like I said earlier, I was just trying to have fun with it. I was reading about that too, and I guess he tried a whole bunch of different costumes, a bunch of different iterations, like some really off the wall random stuff, and he settled on this schoolboy outfit, and it kind of stuck. And I think honestly he was just trying to have fun with it and maybe be a little gimmicky just for laughs, and it turned into a whole thing that ran away with him, and he was like, all right, well, I'm gonna keep dressing as like a prep schoolboy basically.
And that's what's fun about this podcast. Last episode, I had one of my friends, Connor, on. He was a college friend, and it was a Mac Miller album, and a lot of the lyrics were very philosophical. We were getting into like deep conversations about like the meaning of life. But when you listen to AC/DC, it's just pure silly fun, and I think that's kind of what the schoolboy outfit. It's like a perfect fit because it's silly, it's funny, it's childish in a sense, and a lot of these lyrics, there's no. I mean, the lyrics are smart in a, I'm not trying to downplay that aspect, but there's no hidden meaning, it's just a fun lyrics and it's a fun time, and that's the effect they're trying to have. This is music that you drive in a car to fast, or you party to, or you hang out with your friends and you blast this, it's that kind of music, which is, every kind of music has its different niche, and that's what makes this
Agreed.
music fun.
Agreed. And that's why I was like very happy that you let me suggest this album. For those of you who don't know, Connor likes AC/DC. He does. He likes classic rock. He's a bigger Tool fan. He actually suggested Black Sabbath for this episode, and I said no because I didn't want to listen to Black Sabbath. I wanted to listen to AC/DC. And for me, I know that I've seen Otoconia's podcast in the past. I saw yours with Hurrah as well, and you guys really dove into Billie Eilish and kind of the meaning behind a lot of her songs, because she does have that like hidden depth. I'm not saying that AC/DC doesn't necessarily, but that's definitely not why I listen to them. I listen to them for the feel, the chill that runs down your spine when you hear that like gong and Hell's Bells, and you're like, oh, I gotta hear that again. That's why I listen to it on repeat.
Amazing. All right. Any last comments on Thunderstruck before we dive into Shoot to Thrill?
Shoot.
All right, Shoot to Thrill. This song is featured on Iron Man. It's about partying. It is just a fun song. Let's get into it. Alrighty, we are back. Shoot to Thrill. I was jamming out to that song. I mean, the drums really do come apparent on that song, which is great about this podcast. When you listen to music, you kind of listen to it as this cohesive unit. But when you're trying to break it down on a podcast and talk about it, you hear all these elements that you kind of notice subconsciously. And the drums are just going crazy on this album. And I'm glad you picked this live album too, because the live takes of the songs are longer, they're extended, and they'll just go on these musical tangents where they're jamming on the guitar, jamming on the drums, and it's really a good start if you want to get into AC/DC. This album's great. You get a little taste of everything, and then you could dive into kind of the individual albums if you wish. But Michelle, what do you think of this song?
Yeah, no, exactly. I love that. And I'm just quick warning to our listeners, if you start with the live version, you're never going to want to go back to the like official, properly recorded version or whatever. No, you're going to stick with the live like I have, because it's addicting. But yeah, the drums, Connor, are almost as violent as the actual words. And so it really fits, like we said earlier. It's very cohesive, and it's a song that is, it's about sex and drugs, and it sounds more violent than it is, though. If you actually listen to the lyrics, it's not shoot to kill, it's shoot to thrill, play to kill, and it's very much like we're living that hard life, but he's living it with his brother and then his nephew, like not as wholesome as like all families, but still pretty darn wholesome, I guess.
Wholesome in the rock and roll sense.
Right. If you're gonna live the life, might as well do it with your family. But yeah, it's hard. This is my definition of like hard rock. They're talking like being illegal and just, you know, partying their faces off basically, and to the point where it is dangerous. And I think that living on the edge is what gives them that edge. It gives them that intensity that like I said, ramps up.
Which is amazing that they're able to make a new great album in 2020. We both listened to it. We both really enjoyed the album. And, you know, they're older guys now. They're not partying like they were in their 20s. But the album is still good. You know, they live that lifestyle. They live this one-in-a-lifetime experience of being rock and rollers. And you can really see that in their music. You know, they live the life many people don't really get to experience. So,
Right. And some of them didn't make it out the other side, like we mentioned,
mhm.
and they made a pretty poignant tribute to their past band member. And then when Malcolm passed as well, which was I think in like 2014,
Mm.
they still continue with the life, almost in tribute to them, to say, you know what, we're still here and we're going to keep going. We're going to keep rocking until we can't anymore, and until our bodies give out, which is intense, and you can hear that intensity.
And you don't see that a lot in rock bands too. I mean, one example that comes to my mind is Led Zeppelin. I mean, after the passing of John Bonham, you know, the band stopped. It was almost too much. You know,
Yeah.
the the band members were best friends, and you know they just stopped making music because it was just too much emotionally to handle. And that's what's so crazy about AC/DC is when you listen to Highway to Hell and then Back in Black, it's two different lead singers, but to me
Mhm.
it's cohesive. I mean, you don't notice a giant hole or shift where you know one album you know you have Bon Scott and then the next album you have Brian. I mean the albums kind of flow, and that's what's amazing and spectacular about Brian's vocals. I mean he really embodies the energy of Bon Scott, and they made this memorial album Back in Black as a tribute to him, and it's a beautiful tribute. I mean they just nail it on the head, which is amazing. It's really unique in that sense.
Yeah, I think if Scott were around to hear it, he would have been flattered and would have approved. And similarly, like when Malcolm stepped back because of health issues, he supported his replacement
Mm-hmm.
and supported the band. And it was not one of those, oh, we're just switching people out and hope the fans don't notice. It was all done on the up and up from what I can tell. And that just kept it cohesive and kept the music flowing. Instead of turning into this whole angst driven. I mean, we know so many bands that have split up because of whatever reasons.
Right, right.
And usually it comes with a turnover in personnel. And even though we do see that turnover with AC/DC, we don't see the stop to the music, which I appreciated.
And going off of one of the things you said earlier with the song, you know, being about partying and illegal and rock and drugs, rock and roll, ACDC was one of the bands that fell to the 1980s satanic panic. I have a couple more fun facts after this one in later songs. Um, but the name of the band is ACDC, and it was inspired by them looking at a sewing machine and seeing the ACDC, and it's a reference to electrical currents. But there was an ad campaign in the 1980s that was labeling the band as ACDC, Antichrist slash Devil's Child. And it's kind of funny because in that era, you had, you know, people playing Led Zeppelin backwards and hearing satanic music, or if it was, you know, the Beatles and Sgt. Pepper's, you know, there was a satanic craze. And it's interesting that that gets placed on the music because to me, music is a reflection of the culture. It's not the culture itself. And so it's just kind of recording what is going on, you know, in the world. It's not necessarily the cause. So it's
Agreed.
interesting
People
to
are
look
going
in
to fit it.
retrospect.
People are going to fit the music to what they want it to mean,
Hmm.
regardless of whether or not that was intended. Similarly, Twisted Sister ran into that problem with that song, We're Not Going to Take It. I mean, it was a huge political song for a while. People were using it in rallies and marches, and that was not necessarily the intention. It was really just our generation's not willing to take this anymore. And then it got appropriated by a bunch of different groups, and Twisted Sister was kind of like, oh, all right. Um, and I feel like that happened with AC/DC and the
Mm.
satanic references too, because I really don't think that was their intention. It really was kind of like a nerd reference, like alternating current, direct
Hmm.
current,
Right.
um, and I'm fine with that.
And you kind of see the band play to the advantage almost, kind of like Black Sabbath. You know, Black Sabbath is one of those bands that kind of marketed their band as the Satanic Panic. You know, Ozzy Osbourne biting bats' heads off, although he thought they were rubber. But and the album covers of Black Sabbath, are so dark and kind of scary. But AC/DC kind of makes fun of it almost, like Highway to Hell. It's them in schoolboy outfits with horns and tails on the album cover. Almost like a caricature of what people were trying to attribute what they were. So.
Agree. They were just trying to have fun with it, was my take, and I think that's why I enjoy them a little bit more. Not that Black Sabbath is trash; they're not. But I enjoy that feel good more. I'm more often in the mood for AC/DC because of it.
For sure. And let's get right into the next song. We got Back in Black.
Yeah.
This is a tribute to Bon Scott. This is an amazing song. My favorite album, I said, was Highway to Hell, but Back in Black is a close second. So let's get right to it. Alrighty, we're back. Back in Black. What an opening song to kind of a return album. Just amazing. I mean, so you start us off, Michelle. What do you think?
Okay, a quick double check. They couldn't see me dancing, could they?
Oh no, a little bit. I mean, the moves were good, so I switched the logo back, but I can edit it out if you want.
Thank you, because I definitely lost myself to the music there. They couldn't see, right?
No, we'll cut it out.
Oh, thank goodness.
The dance moves were good though. I could see the dance moves.
This song is my jam. It is. It always has been.
Yeah.
I mean, like I could just stomp to this song. But
man, you were talking about the TNT dance. You didn't tell us about the Back in Black dance.
Oh yeah, there was a Back in Black dance too. Really, it was me and 3 other girls in my class, and we'd like go to the mall and we'd do this like stomp walk, like in step with the dun 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 dun. Yeah, it's.
And that's what I meant with the simplicity, not as like a bad mouth in AC/DC, but that da 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 da. It's so simple, but it's just it's powerful, which is awesome.
It is. It's unique. It's powerful, and it just like my heart's racing just from listening to that song. It does it every time, and I love that feeling. I need it.
And we were talking about how the lyrics, aren't this crazy philosophical, but that first verse, the lyrics are genius. I mean, it's coming back on the scene, getting back at it. One of my favorite lyrics is, "Yes, I'm wet from the noose that's kept me hanging about. I'm just looking at the sky because it's getting me high. Forget the hearse because I'll never die. I got 9 lives, cat eyes." It's so good. I mean, the lyrics are they're funny, they're powerful, and they just fit with the music. I mean, expertly.
They really do. They flow. It's all on theme. It's all on point. A lot of them are colloquialisms, but they're things everybody gets. You don't have to, have grown up just in the U.S. or just in Australia to understand what they're talking about, even though they're making like a lot of modern references. And it's just it pumps me up so much. And that guitar riff halfway through, oh man, I'm so glad that you played that for them, because that is what hooked me, honestly. I'm listening to this song at, I don't know, I must have been 12, 13. And you get the first verse with the intro and everything, and you're like, okay, this is kind of cool. This rocks hard. And then you get to that solo, and it's just like up and down, and they could, I can't even tell you how much I love that. It's what hooks me on AC/DC, and I keep coming back for more to this day.
Amazing. Fun fact, this is the first song Kurt Cobain learned at the age of 14. So pretty cool. Pretty awesome.
I prefer this song when, like a bunch of high school teenage boys would always, try and figure out how to play guitar. And a lot of them defaulted to like Purple Rain as like the first song to learn. And I never understood why. I'm like, just go with this. It's so much better. I recognized it easier. It's like you can get closer to it as a novice, and people will like actually know what you're trying to play because it's so iconic.
Right. And I think we touched on it, and I think you nailed it. I mean, the song is a celebration of life. It's about living wild. And when Brian Johnson was told to write an intro song for this album, he said, it can't be morbid. It has to be for Bon, and it has to be a celebration. So the song is actually written in Bon's perspective. So really cool. Just an amazing song. All right, Michelle, any last comments on Back in Black other than cut the dance moves?
Man, that was so bad. They didn't get to the part about the 9 lives and like, oh, we'll talk about this later, but you definitely need to cut the tape.
We'll cut it. All right, up next we have Hell's Bells. You ready, Michelle?
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh,
I didn't even mean to do that, but yes.
Let's get right to it. Alrighty, we are back. That was Hell's Bells by AC DC. Michelle, start us off.
Oh man, like where to start? I mean, there's a line that sensations up and down my spine, and like I feel that like when I hear this song, especially with like the chords at the beginning, it's like almost like a church bell ringing, and I know they did that on purpose, and I appreciate that. It's almost like we're going after Satan, so it's kind of like in a sense anti-satanic, which is so funny that they were part of that movement that we mentioned earlier. Very tongue-in-cheek, very much like, hey, we're going to redefine ourselves, and hey, no, this is in fact not what we're talking about, but we can definitely, you know, start a new craze on it if you want, like playing to the audience basically. And it's like we're gonna get you, Satan, get you, take you to hell. I mean, like basically like rope the demon and drag him back kicking and screaming. Almost my take on it. And it's hard rock, and I love that.
And it's amazing too because you're right, the bells heard throughout the song are essential, and that is actually a real bell. It was made by John Taylor bell founders in Loughborough, and it's a 2,000 pounds of cast bronze. And during live concerts, they actually hang the bell from the ceiling. It comes down, you know, they got this big metal bell with AC/DC on it, and they hang from the rope and they'll swing on it in live concert, like Miley Cyrus on a wrecking ball.
Only better.
Yeah, only better. So, pretty crazy. It was written during a storm after writing Back in Black. And when we talked about the United States using this like music, there's another fun fact. So in 1989, when Panama's General Manuel Noriega took refuge in Vatican Embassy, the U.S. military blasted AC/DC's music in his direction for 2 straight days. Despite a United Nations ban on using loud music during interrogations, they proceeded to use Hell's Bells as their weapon of choice. The dictator surrendered eventually. So that is kind of wild.
He couldn't handle it. It literally like melted his face off. It's, I mean, I support that. I mean, I support AC/DC as a tactic.
You all heard it here first. Michelle is pro AC/DC torture. No, I'm just kidding.
No. But I'm pro AC/DC. I don't understand why people would consider AC/DC torture. If I were locked up for 2 days with AC/DC, I'd be happy.
You'd be amped up. You'd be breaking out of that cell.
I'd be like, let's go. Like a dog with a bone. But I don't understand why that was his reaction. But then again, I'm a fan, and I guess maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was more into classical music than classic rock. Who knows? Point being, Hell's Bells is kind of like the epitome of their like anti-satanic response, I think. And I mean, they have several songs on this theme. Highway to Hell, which I don't think we'll have time to play. But a lot of, even if it's not in the name, a lot of like anti-death, anti-satanic references, which is why it's so funny that it was appropriated. and like I said, I think they play into it. They're very tongue-in-cheek. They're very just like having fun with the crowd, having fun with their fans, and you want to use their music for a movement that it was not initially intended for. They're like, all right, float your boat.
Amazing.
But yeah, I think it is funny though that this song was written during a storm. Thunderstruck was written during a storm. I mean, they've got this like high wattage, like
currents, electrical current.
Right, exactly. Which I love, and I can't get it out of my head. I think it's interesting and fun, and it elevates their music to a certain degree. It's really, like I said, it's about what it is. It's about sex and drugs and rock and roll and living the lifestyle, but even more so, and they have all these like undertones, these tributes and like tongue-in-cheek moments, and just like playing with it, which elevates them in my opinion.
Awesome. So, Michelle, we're at 50 minutes currently. Are we going to split this episode into two, or are we going to keep going? What's your call?
What do you think the viewers would prefer? Because
I
we got
think
a lot of AC/DC left.
we got a lot of AC/DC left. I think it would be good maybe to split it, just just so it's not a super long episode. So how about this? We'll play one more song. You Shook Me All Night Long. We'll play the song. We'll come back and we'll say our goodbyes. How does that sound?
Perfect.
And then in the future, you guys will see the second half of this episode. In the second half, we'll be doing Highway to Hell, TNT, and For Those About to Rock. So I hope you guys have been enjoying. Let's hit this one last song. Let's get right into it. Alrighty, we are back. Had to let it play extra long for that guitar solo. I was like, all right, we're cutting it. We're going back. And then it came in, and I was like, all right, never mind. 10 more seconds.
What
10 more
a
seconds.
strong finish to this episode.
This was great. Our first classic rock episode. This is what we needed. We had Billie Eilish. We had Mac Miller. I like that music, but classic rock is the root. And I'm glad, Michelle, you were able to bring that enthusiasm, the spirit of AC/DC to our show. Last song. What do you think, Michelle? Give us this recap.
This song, the first time I really listened to it a lot, it was my summer song, senior year of high school, and at the time I didn't realize just how filthy it was. It's a dirty song. I mean, she was a fast machine.
Mm-hmm.
She kept her motor clean. It's pretty filthy, but I mean, despite that, I love it. It's a summer song. Again, like you said, you listen to it when you're driving the car, and you have to keep an eye on the speedometer so you don't find yourself just blowing by everybody. It's again very very simplistic chords like that you can rock out to, that I think anybody who's a novice guitarist can learn. For me, the emotions that it elicits, I mean, despite the fact that it really is just filthy. Working double time on the seduction line, I mean, come on. you shook me all night long. I mean, it's in the name, but it's when I think of classic rock, this is the song that I think of. And people who don't really know AC/DC, I think, know this song because it's so prevalent in social media and movies. It's been used as a soundtrack many times. It's out there, and there's a reason that it's still popular today.
And I think you hit on something that we're discovering in every episode. When I ask people, do you want to come on the podcast? Pick any album you want. We're finding that a common, theme or occurrence is music really does act like the soundtrack of our lives at times. When I hear a specific song, I think back to a certain era in my life or a specific point in time. And it is just really cool. I mean, I think this is a universal experience that everyone I've had on the show so far has said this at some point. And I think it's really cool how music kind of fits into our life, our emotions. And yeah, you're right. This song is dirty, but it's fun. It's classic rock. It's just a fun song. There's no serious meaning to it. And this is actually the first song Brian Johnson wrote after joining the band. So super cool. Michelle, thank you for joining us. This has been such a fun episode. I cannot wait to do part 2. It's been a great time. Do you have any last remarks? Anything you want to plug, share? Floor is yours. Wrap us up here.
I'm just glad to be on this today. I'm looking forward to our next episode, part 2 AC/DC, because there's a lot more to go on. This Otoconioa, for me, you said it's rocks in your ears, it's rock in your ears. And so the fact that we're doing rock and roll just makes sense, I think, for Otoconioa. I think it fits well. Quick anecdote, I was on my neurology rotation with Dr. Lee. He was doing the EMG clinic, and I had been listening to AC/DC on the drive to the hospital that day. And so I'm in there, and he's using these electrodes to check for diabetic peripheral neuropathy and a whole bunch of different disease states. And I'm wondering, okay, how does this machine work? I'm like, wait a minute, it's an electric machine. Do they use alternating or direct current? Turns out it's alternating, which I expect, but the frequency works. It's fine. Point being, no matter where I'm at, I'm always in the mood for AC/DC, no matter what I'm doing. classic rock, like you said, it's the soundtrack of our lives. It keeps coming back, and that's why I keep coming back for more.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for your time. You were a great guest. This is a fun episode. I hope the people enjoy. Check out Otoconioa. Like I said before, please subscribe. It'll really help our analytics. Check out our other bonus episodes and our first episode with Hurrah. Hurrah will be coming, making a comeback soon. We're going to do Tools, Ladder, Alice. We've been doing these bonus episodes just to get some diversity on the channel with different music and because we all have busy schedules. So this has been fun. Please check out our other shows. We have the video game streaming. We have the art blogs. And if you're interested in signing up for our bi-weekly newsletter, it's kind of fun. Email otoconiaradio@gmail.com. You can sign up. Also, if you want to send us vinyl, email us there. But thank you again, Michelle. This has been so much fun. I cannot wait to have you on the show again.
Thanks. Happy to oblige. I'll see you later, Connor.
See you later.